Good evening and welcome to Battaramulla in the parliamentary capital of Sri Lanka at sunset. It's raining a bit. Battaramulla is a little town very close to the parliament. It used to be here called Battaramulla before the parliament was built, and it was built up in the 1950s when a bunch of houses were built for railway employees working for the Sri Lankan Ceylon Railways at the time. And it's a swampy area, and this is sunset time. So apart from the parliament nearby, Battaramulla itself, in a slightly more historical context from before the 1950s, encompasses a sort of Sunday school with a monument commemorating the 2500th anniversary of the passing away of the Buddha at a location called Jayantipura. And also there's a kind of Bodhi tree not too far away from here. The building you are seeing in front of you is actually the headquarters of the Department for Wildlife Conservation. I think it's called the DWLC. Yeah, the Department for Wildlife Conservation, not to be confused with the Wildlife and Nature Protection Society that also happens to be in the vicinity. The Department of Wildlife and Conservation building that you see used to be at Colombo 7 at Gregory's Road, but it has been moved here since then, so it's a new building. And presumably before this building was built, the view was even better. Unfortunately, we can't easily see that sunset right now. So we're actually focusing our camera towards a place called Jayantipura in Battaramulla, and we are looking at a sort of like a swampy pond, and this is sunset time. So it's a little bit wet, and there's a cricket match going on, so things should be a lot quieter than normal, although this is still somewhat in the middle of rush hour. Hopefully this will not be the last time I should say, of a live stream from Battaramulla. I hope to do one again, maybe in the evening, maybe in a future date. So this is actually a sort of this is a habitat still replete with wildlife, despite the fact that this has now become a very prestigious area thanks to the parliament moving here around the 1980s. Yes, there has been a lot of development with lots of new buildings coming up in the vicinity. Land prices have rocketed, but at the same time, the landscape artists have made sure that the area still retains some kind of charm and beauty, especially with regards to wetlands. And there has been quite a lot of preservation of the wetlands and lots of wetland reserves declared, regardless of how well the protection of the protection of wildlife is implemented. So here we are at wetlands in Battaramulla, in the vicinity of a quite a well-developed Buddhist temple nearby. That used to be much smaller, approximately 50 years ago. So we're not going to be encountering lots and lots of wildlife. It's mostly very, very common birds, if at all, that can be picked up by the camera and also by the microphone in particular. So may say something about some of the sounds we hear, although who knows. I doubt that it'll be terribly exciting. Having said that, it's just really lovely to be making possibly one of the world's first wildlife live streams from this completely unknown place, generally speaking, at least in a global context, called Battaramulla. And it happens to have some family connections to me, as I used to grow up here when I was very young. So this water isn't the cleanest in the world, but at the same time it still harbors lots of fish. Not necessarily very lots of endemic native fish, but slightly more hardy varieties, especially things like tilapia, as kind of unpronounceable genus starting with the letter O, Mozambicus, which is probably some kind of tilapia species that lives in large numbers in wetlands like this. It's an introduced species of fish, and it breeds very, very well, because it's a fish with well-developed parental care. Typically, the aquatic birds that are most prominent around here, although it's not necessarily as aquatic as it once used to be, is the red-wattled lapwing. We're also picking up on the sounds of yellow-billed babblers that are about to roost. There's a bit of a fishy smell here. The temperature is about 26 degrees. It's somewhat cooler than it should be because of the rain. Koels calling. So most of the sounds that we now hear are of birds settling down and going to roost. So I'm about to go on a slight walk to find the name of this temple that we're nearby, so you know where we are. And hopefully I'll be able to bring it back with this camera and equipment being somewhat safe on my return. Maybe I should focus a little bit on the water, where you might be able to just about maybe see some fish. So let's leave you with some fish, and I'll go and find the name of the temple. So we could have a location here for a change, unlike all our live streams. This is still me, by the way. I'm not stealing my own camera. Just taking it to a more salubrious location to be able to see some fish. White-bellied drongo singing. So I'll be back with the name of the temple. So the temple is called Sri Sudasanarama, and we're in the vicinity of that temple at sunset with rain. Maybe we might be able to see some fish. Somebody's put some rice here, so I'm going to be putting some of it into the water just in case some fish turn up. Some fish are turning up, but I'm not sure if it's visible to the camera. So like I'm trying to say earlier, we're in the world famous place of Battaramulla, very close to the Sri Lanka Parliament, watching the sunset. It's going to get dark very soon and the sky is a golden color. But at the moment we're trying to concentrate on seeing a few fish, at least to the lens of this primitive camera. There, much clearer. There you can see some fish. And there is the sunset in the distance. Some of the fish here are actually quite large, reaching perhaps 1 foot in length, but most of the ones that are visible are only about 10 centimeters long. They aren't native fish, but introduced. And now it's getting a bit darker, so it's becoming harder to see them clearly. Particularly given that light reflects some, water reflects some light away, making it less easy to penetrate. So there's a flock of birds flying overhead that's picked up in the water. So that's a white-bellied drongo. Stop raining once again, it might start. So let's have a slightly more broader view from our camera. Got some bats flying overhead now. So some images for the first time live from the world famous Battaramulla. At least it's world famous now. A species of exotic palm introduced along this roadway of indeterminate species. I should say it's just a palm with sometimes with bright orange fruit. So there's a little bit of the temple and a dog walking upwards towards us. Location shots from the world famous Battaramulla, with this temple that I have named but I have forgotten, and a wetland landscape before us, facing the building which houses the Department for Wildlife Conservation, regardless of how well they're doing their duty. So maybe we will slowly take a walk, even though the light is fast fading. There is a swallow or swift, or possibly even a bat flitting over the wetland right now. Slowly picking up the camera and taking a walk. Yeah, looks like there's a bat actually. So we're in Battaramulla towards sunset. Walking towards the Department of Wildlife Conservation. Really nice to have a wetland here. I bet that there are some fishing cats here at night or not far away. White-breasted waterhen in a tree nearby. Quite a few frogs calling from this body of water now. So even though it's sunset for these frogs, the night is still beginning. Or rather, their performance is beginning. This looks like classic elephant grass, probably an alien invasive or introduced from Africa to feed cattle. So we're passing the Department of Wildlife Conservation. Lots of shrub frogs calling. See lots and lots of new buildings taking place. Probably going to despoil the classic architecture that this place once boasted. And here is a Sunday school, probably erected around the 1970s. And here is a monument in Jayantipura commemorating the 2500th anniversary of the final Nibbana of the Buddha. So this is a classic junction monument that has been here since the 1950s, we imagine. Yeah, 1955. So 1955 junction, a recently constructed Department of Wildlife Conservation, and a Sunday school right now that you can see in front of you. And in front of us, a Bodhi tree, Ficus religiosa, that has probably been here since about the 1950s. Many of these houses have been renovated now. Since the 1950s, many of the houses have been pulled down and new ones have replaced them. But maybe in a few places, older structures still remain. This house probably theoretically dates from about the 1950s. Lots of shrub frogs calling. So we're very close to right circular road at Jayantipura, Battaramulla. Much familiar to me from my young days. Clearly with remaining, some wildlife remaining. So let us plunge a little bit further before we halt this live stream from Battaramulla. Still chasing after a distant sunset. We are now at a place called Mawata. Lots of shrub frogs around. This looks like an old house, still preserved from the 1950s. It's quite difficult to find old properties right now because they get demolished much more easily, given there are hardly any planning rules in this country. And buildings are destroyed quite easily. We've come to another monument that is not very visible to the camera, very similar to that previous structure we saw at the junction. Put up by the Ministry of Housing. And we finish our journey at Center Road, Jayantipura, Battaramulla. This is a good place to stop the live recording. I know it's been a little bit unorthodox, but hopefully we will revisit this place once again and revisit some of these monuments before us. Thanks for anybody who joined, and signing off for now.